Welcome to Complex Crafting in Pathfinder 2nd Edition. This video provides an overview of an optional crafting system that modifies the original crafting rules that were covered in parts 1 through 3 of this series. As such, it is highly recommended that you watch part 1 of this series before continuing. A link to it is provided in the description. One of the most controversial aspects of Pathfinder's crafting rules is that it takes a minimum of 4 days to craft anything regardless of its value. It takes a first level blacksmith 4 days to create a simple dagger, and it also takes a level 20 blacksmith with legendary proficiency 4 days to craft the same basic dagger. The complex crafting system was released as an option to address this issue. Basically, what this system does is it reduces the amount of time needed to craft items that are lower level than the crafter, but with an increase to the crafting DC that must be passed. This is a 4-step process. Step 1, you must meet all requirements. Step 2, you set up the project. Step 3, roll a crafting skill check. And Step 4, finish the project by either paying off the remaining value or by spending additional days of downtime working on it. The core crafting system is mostly unchanged with complex crafting, and it's really only in steps 2 and 4 that you'll see any difference. So step 1 is still the same. You must meet all the same requirements as before, including providing half the item's value in raw materials. In step 2, you set up the project. With the original crafting rules, this took a flat 4 days. But with complex crafting, the amount of setup time may be anywhere from 4 hours to 6 days. To determine the amount of setup time that's needed, refer to Table 5.1 from the Pathfinder Treasure Vault. There are 2 columns, one for consumable items and another for permanent items. If the item you're crafting has an item level that's equal to your character level, then you need 4 days of setup time if it is a consumable item, or 6 days of setup time if it's a permanent item, and the amount of setup time that's required is lowered if the item's level is lower than your character level. Once you've determined the setup time, you next need to decide if you're okay with that amount of time, or if you want to rush things and craft the item faster. The amount of time you can reduce the setup by is based on your crafting proficiency level. With trained proficiency, you cannot rush a project and must use the listed setup time. With expert proficiency, you can reduce the setup time by 1 day, but suffer a +5 increase to the crafting DC. With master proficiency, you can reduce the setup time by 2 days, but suffer a +10 increase to the crafting DC, and with legendary proficiency, you can reduce the setup time by 3 days, but suffer a +15 increase to the crafting DC. And setup always requires a minimum of 4 hours, no matter how much you lower it by rushing. After the setup time passes, you enter step 3 and need to roll your crafting skill check. This works exactly the same as it does with the original crafting rules, except the DC might be increased due to rushing the project. If you succeed on this check, then you move on to step 4 and can either pay off the remaining balance in materials, or you can spend additional days working on the project. Each extra day spent reduces the remaining balance by the appropriate amount found on the income earned table. Again, this is the same as with the original crafting system, so see part 1 of this video series if you need a refresher on how that works. What is different with complex crafting though, is you can choose not only to rush the setup process, but you can also choose to rush the finishing process here as well. If you are at least expert in crafting, you can rush the finishing process, reducing the value of the materials you must expend to complete the item by twice the amount found on the income earned table after each day of downtime working. So for example, if you're 6th level with expert crafting proficiency, each additional day of downtime spent working on the project will reduce the remaining balance by 2 gold pieces. But if you decide to rush, then each extra day of work will reduce the remaining balance by 4 gold pieces. This, of course, does not come without added risk. At the end of the crafting process, after the remaining balance has been reduced to 0 and the item would normally be complete, you must roll a flat check. The DC for this check is 10, plus the item's level minus your crafting proficiency bonus. Note that this is only your proficiency bonus, not your total crafting skill modifier. So this will be your level plus 4 if you have expert proficiency, your level plus 6 with master proficiency, or your level plus 8 with legendary proficiency. And because this is a flat check, nothing is added to the roll. It is just a straight d20 against the DC. For example, if you're 6th level with expert proficiency and you're crafting a 4th level item, the DC for this check will be 10 plus 4 for the item level, minus 10 for having expert proficiency, and that gives you a final DC of 4. If this flat check is a success or critical success, then the item is crafted without any issues. If the check is a failure, then the item is completed but gains a quirk, and quirks can be found on page 86 of the Game Mastery Guide. And if the check is a critical failure, then the item is either ruined or may become cursed at the GM's discretion. Complex crafting also introduces one new crafting skill feat called Quick Setup. As the name implies, this feat allows a character to reduce the amount of needed setup time even further for items that are at least 6 levels lower than the character's level. It also allows a character to reduce the setup time for consumable items to only 2 hours, which makes it possible to craft such items during the adventuring day instead of solely during downtime. However, please note that this feat is listed as rare, so it should not be commonly available, and the book provides an additional warning that reads, "This rapid form of crafting could cause your players to end up with higher treasure values or more items than an adventure expects them to have, so be careful about allowing this feat in campaigns that already provide significant amounts of downtime." So that should give you an overview of the new complex crafting rules found in the Pathfinder Treasure Vault. Stay tuned for a follow-up to this video where I will be providing an example that walks you through the entire crafting process of crafting a magic item using this system. And again, if any of this is confusing, make sure you check out the first video of this series, as this new complex crafting system keeps the original process largely intact. A link to that video and all my others that touch on crafting are included in the description, and I'd like to take a quick moment to thank everyone out there who supports me, whether that's by leaving a comment, clicking the like button, subscribing to the channel, subscribing to the Patreon, buying a super thanks. It all adds up and I greatly appreciate everything the community does to support me and this channel. So with that, thanks for watching, take care, and happy gaming.